Welcome, everyone. We're here to really help you navigate this college-bound journey. Our goal is that you're able to stay on target. I've done this professionally since 1999. I've been through it once as a parent with a student who's now out of high school, and I'm getting ready to do it with 2 more children. So I know what needs to take place when. I know this can be extremely stressful. Life doesn't slow down for us, and we have all of these things that we have to do. It's not like there's no pause button, and yeah, we have to do all of these things and fit them in. And we're going to let you know what those things are as we go ahead and go through this. So we don't want you to be overwhelmed. We want it to be fun. It should be a little bit of fun, but we know when the stress starts, it can cause family conflict as well. So we've got some tips to try to avoid the family conflict, let you know what to do when, take a very targeted approach so that at least parts of it can be pleasurable and you're not going to get overwhelmed. So how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to help you with all pieces of the timeline, but we want to let you know, first of all, that anything I talk about on this webinar needs to be done in a timely fashion. We know what and when, and that's because deadlines are moving earlier and earlier. 5 years ago, all of these deadlines were months later than they are now. So really important that you keep up with this. Parents that are listening in, is a 180 from what you experienced when you were in high school and heading into college. We have a rule, we say the 2-week rule, but occasionally even the 2-week rule doesn't work. So for instance, if it's February 1st and families are thinking about going on college visits over spring break, which will be usually in late March every year, then 2 weeks probably isn't going to suffice because college campuses are very busy during that time. At one point in the fall, I was looking at Miami University. They had a preview day, and I was looking at it about 3 weeks in advance, and it was already filled up. So when I give you these deadlines and suggestions and dates and advice, plan 2 or more weeks ahead for everything that you need to schedule. That is crucial. Sometimes even a month, or 1 month, or even 6 weeks. So that everything is moving in an earlier direction. If you follow the plan and you stay on target, we guarantee you that you're going to find your best fit college. It might not be the brand name that you wanted, but 95% of students, when they ultimately enroll where they are admitted, are thrilled with their choice, and they wouldn't change anything, even if it wasn't their first choice college. So know that there is a great fit for everybody out there, and it doesn't have to be your reach school. So grades are going to be the #1 factor in getting into college. Nothing else beats it. When students are starting in the 9th grade, and here's what we're going to do as we go through this. When students are starting in the 9th grade, they are, we're going to just take a quick overview, and then in 10th grade, we're going to take a quick overview of that. We're going to spend the bulk of our time of what happens in the 11th grade year, and then we're going to do the 12th grade year as well. But most of this happens in 11th grade. But we have some families with 9th graders on. And so what should you be doing? Or parents who are on and you're going like, man, I feel like, I could have done better with my 9th grader. And unfortunately, there's no do-over. But I have a younger kid and I would do it differently. So, we really view 9th grade as just getting your feet firmly planted in high school, learn how to study, keep those grades up. As I already indicated, there are only 6 semesters worth of grades before you apply to college. The grades in the senior year do not matter or count. Some schools will look at your grades mid-year through. We'll talk about that. But for the most part, you're applying with who you are at the end of 3 years of high school. So it's really important to start out strong. So students in 9th grade, it's harder, learn how to study, get involved. Frequently, I'm asked by families who would like to do, really go selective schools or go even for the Ivies. We meet people like that. We do work with those families, but we work for families all across the spectrum. I tell them that the kids who end up attending those highly selective schools, they all have great grades, they all have great ACT and or SAT scores. What sets them apart is what they pursued, what they got involved with, and how they developed their leadership and the impact that they had on their high school while they were in high school. And that really starts in ninth grade. So getting involved. We believe in at LEAP, and I know many people are considering what classes they're going to take next year. We believe that every year when you are doing your course selection, that you should plan all your remaining years of high school. Why would you do that? You may change your mind on what you're taking in 9th, 10th grade, or even 11th grade based on what the prerequisites are that are offered currently at your, for the courses that are currently offered at your high school. So you might find that you need to make a change. So instead of just saying, oh, you know, I love art and getting in as many art classes, but then you realize that's going to keep you out of perhaps a business class that you wanted to try because you didn't get in a prerequisite and you can't take it your senior year, you know, get it all the way planned out. I say informal college visits. So I want to, let me see if I can launch our next poll here. I was having trouble getting it open. Our next poll is, I want to know how many of you have done an official college visit yet. So let's go ahead and vote on that. There's a difference between official college visits and those that are informal. Ninth grade really is informal. What do I mean by informal? Your family's going on vacation. You are going to hit a college campus. You're down in Florida. You're going to go ahead and hit a college campus in the area so that your child can get a feel for that. And you're going to, let's go ahead and look at these. So we're about 50-50. So you're going to go ahead while you're out of town and hit some campuses just so your child gets some additional exposure to a school that they wouldn't already. You're not going to maybe do the official tour. You're just going to drive through campus, walk through it perhaps. That would be an informal college visit. I started doing those with my now high school graduate when we were in the 8th grade. So if we ended up in a city far away from home, I made sure we got on a campus. That allows students to start getting an idea of what they like on a campus. So for the 49% of you that said no, you haven't done an official visit, I'm sure your child's been on a college campus at one point, and that school's already making an impression on them. Many high schools are giving ninth graders the pre-ACT. This is a test that is newer. 2014, I think, or 2016, it came back. Some high schools give it in the 9th grade, some give it in the 10th grade, some do not give it at all. It is normed to 10th graders, so it's not quite as hard as the ACT. If you're lucky enough to take the pre-ACT or maybe even the PSAT as a 9th grader, just start keeping an eye on what those scores are, because that will give you good indicators on what kind of a future tester you're going to be. And we'll talk about testing a little bit more when we get to the 11th grade year. So what about 10th grade? Well, keep those grades up still, obviously. Now that the student is, two full semesters under their belt, they've entered the 3rd semester, we at LEAP suggest that you go ahead and you put an official resume together. This is truly a document. And we're offering our resume workshop in March. Why do we do that? Because it saves time on future applications. If those applications as a 10th grader feel like they're really far away, I would tell you that looking at that can make you start to see, or have your child see, what gaps maybe they have that they should go ahead and focus on closing before they're going to be a college applicant after the 11th grade year. I think of a student who in the greater Cincinnati area who more than 5 years ago, actually 7 years ago, I sat down with her as a 10th grader, and they wanted to do a resume evaluation and get it very much, down, look at where their gaps were, and that they would know where those were so they could make a plan. So we did that. I saw that based on her desires, she was really lacking in leadership and initiative. So went ahead and made some suggestions to her. She started a club at her school. They put together a project. That club and that project specifically ended up getting her a full ride to Ohio State University. It's a great story. She never would have thought about her gaps in her sophomore year had she not put it down in paper, and it became kind of obvious at that point. So that's really important. You're still in the 10th grade. Your visits, for the most part, should be informal because it can still be overwhelming for students to be thinking beyond high school. But this is a spectacular time as you get about the halfway point to start thinking about your future career. And we're going to talk about that in just a second. Hopefully, you'll have taken the pre-ACT or the PSAT by that point. And we suggest that by the time 10th grade ends, every 10th grader, their family, has established what their ACT or SAT dates will be going into their junior year. Some students should be testing as soon as the June, right after their sophomore year. Other sophomores that are currently on listening in today, they wouldn't want to test until spring of their 11th grade year. So it's driven by many factors. We always have regularly, like every other month, our ACT SAT planning workshop. We just walk you through creating that plan, or Sherry, our ACT SAT director, can help you with that. But 10th graders, that should be a goal. So by the time we get to June 1st, hopefully even before, if you're, engaged in this webinar now, that you've got a plan for when you're going to take your ACT and SAT, even if your first test is a good 9-10 months away. So, keep that in mind, pay attention to that, get moving on that for sure. So why do we say that you should start looking for your future career? We believe that college is a very expensive four-year vehicle to the 40 years that you're going to work. So we do college major and career coaching. We have a white paper and sample reports, but our white paper talks about why really as early as spring of the sophomore year, you should start thinking about what the end is. Here's the deal. I said I want to eliminate conflict for your family as you go through this process. So one of those battles that I regularly have seen in my 19 years of doing this is a student falls in love with a campus and they later find out one of two things. I'm going to hit the first one now. We're going to hit the second one in a little bit. But they get in there and they find out that they cannot study what they want to study to get to the career that they want. Nothing can be worse. So that creates huge conflict between parents and students. I've seen students start to say, well, then I'll just go study this instead, when they were already very well set on a great matching career because they fell in love with the school that couldn't get them there. So our suggestion is that you begin with your end in mind. And it might not be pinpointed. I've got a lot of options here on this graphic. So, perhaps it's architecture and engineering and finance. It might be narrowed down to 2 or 3, but you're not stepping on campuses that don't offer those majors so that that those schools can get you to what you're possibly considering at that point. Is it a foolproof method? No, but we really believe that you're going to do a better job with college selection if you go ahead and get that focus narrowed at the very beginning. So something to definitely keep in mind. Okay, college selection. So let's talk about, as you get through 9th and 10th grade, what that college selection starts to look like. So 10th graders, you'll be thinking about these things, but 11th graders, you're in the middle of this. So if you're on and you're maybe listening to this when you're halfway through your 11th grade year and you go, gosh, I haven't started college visits, time's now to get on it, because those college applications will go live on August 1st. So there are over 3,000 reputable four-year universities. I say reputable because there are other four-year schools like for-profit colleges or colleges that are on the edge of closing down because they financially are not fit, that we would not consider them to be reputable. So when you start your visit, we suggest that you do so online. All high schools regularly have the college reps coming to visit their school. Some high schools will allow you to go to an unlimited number of those college rep visits. Others will limit you. So be sure that you're checking, whether it's Naviance or through the guidance office, that you're going ahead and signing up and going and getting information from these college reps when they visit, especially if it's a school really far away that you're not sure if you want to take the time or take the money to go visit it. Learn something about them without traveling. College fairs. So typically, college fair season, if you are on, and I know we have people from all over the U.S. with us, but those of you in Greater Cincinnati, where I am, so about 50% of our people that are on today are from the Greater Cincinnati area. Our college fair season happens to be in the fall. Last year, I think I had 12.5 college fairs listed on the LEAP website in the Greater Cincinnati area from August through October. In the spring, Columbus, Ohio, and Indianapolis, Indiana will have college visits or a college fair, the main college fair, but not a bunch. So you have to plan for this. If you're a junior and you didn't go to any college fairs, the opportunity to do so would be very limited before you're already applying to college on August 1st. So keep that in mind. What are receptions? Receptions are when, and you would have to check with the local college, but you just say if it's somebody farther away. I know, for instance, like University of Alabama comes to Cincinnati, and every fall they do a reception at, whether it's at a hotel or reception hall, and they invite people to come hear about their university. So that's not uncommon, but you need to check with the school specifically. Now, why do I say visits should be through May 1st? So by through, I mean like finished May 1st. Students need to go on college campuses when they are busy. And I visited, dozens and dozens and dozens of college campuses myself, and I'm interacting with them regularly. I do a pretty good job of assessing what student might like a particular university. I have seen numerous times over the years when I am quite confident that have a student going on a campus that they will fall in love with and would be a good fit for them, and they go in the summer when nobody's on campus, and they return from that visit feeling that it wasn't a good fit, they didn't like the campus. That gives students an uneasy feeling, and they will knock a college off their list. Not always, but sometimes it could have been a great fit for them career-wise, financially, and as far as getting in. So college visits, while I won't say never step on a campus in the summer, college campuses are best visited when college is in session. So colleges get out at the beginning of May before high schools are out, and they go back in August around the time that high schools go back. They are deserted for Thanksgiving week and for winter break. So you need to keep those dates in mind and plan your visits accordingly. We advise every family, and since we've got mainly sophomores and juniors listening in today, I would say sit down with your school calendar, sit down with your family calendar, and you all are in a place where you can at least map out when your college visits are going to take place. So when might that be? Random days off. So your school has a teacher professional development today. Oh, somebody said they completely lost audio. Anybody else? Can you guys hear me? Yep, lots of people can. So I'm going to have to say most people can. So I'm going to have to say I would try calling in if you're using your computer audio and you've lost audio. That sometimes can help. So switch up, call in instead of listening through your computer or vice versa. So moving right along. So look for your days off. So days off mean your teachers have professional development. Go ahead and look for the teacher work day at the end of the grading period. All of those are good days. Breaks. So when I say breaks, so that would mean usually spring breaks. Spring break's a great one because college spring breaks tend to be earlier than the high school spring break. So that would be a great time to do it. But remember, that's a time that you're going to have to go ahead and plan way more than 2 weeks in advance, or they will go ahead and fill up. All of you get excused visit days. Now, some of your high schools will give you 2 to 3 days a year. Some give you unlimited, so you need to check with your high school, where if you go on a college visit and you bring back evidence that you're an official college visit, you will be able to have an excused absence. Those can be great to tie into maybe a long weekend. You know, if there's a school having a preview day on a weekend, that would be a great time to do it, especially if you're going to travel at a distance. So use those excused visit days. Word of warning, sophomores, a lot of times those are not, you're not allowed to take those until your junior and senior years. And then preview days. So if a college has, sometimes college campuses can feel a little light as far as the crowd on a weekend. However, if they have during the school year a planned preview day where they have their engineering preview day on a Saturday, campus will feel busy. So don't avoid those. And then don't be surprised if you end up doing some visits in 12th grade. So while for the purpose of narrowing down where to apply to college, it's best to get in as many of your visits as you can by May 1st of your junior year. Oftentimes, you might visit or even revisit a college in the senior year. Why might you do that? Well, a college is far away. You want to wait and see if you got in first to see what your aid package is to see if it's even worthwhile to go visit. Then go ahead and wait. That makes perfect sense. You can apply by, meeting them at a college fair, researching them online, and then going ahead and visiting at a later date. I had a recent student that we're working with, thought for sure they were going to go to their state flagship, went out of town this past weekend to a different state flagship, miles and miles and miles away. And fell in love kind of with that campus, said, oh no, I need to quickly get back on that other campus so that I thought I was going to go to, so I can see which one I really like the best before I go ahead and enroll in a college, which we'll talk about how and when you enroll in just a little bit. So get out the family calendar, get out the school calendar, get out the college calendars, and see where they mesh so you can target your college visits. So hopefully you have as many of those complete by May 1st of the junior year. So I already said grades are the number one factor in getting in. And I'm going to launch our next poll. Has your child taken the ACT or SAT yet? So go ahead and let us know. So this is the number 2 factor in getting in besides grades and the classes that you've taken. As I already said, you want to go ahead and develop your testing timeline. Now, why is it a timeline? It's a timeline because you're going to take this more than, let's go ahead and see what we had. So 63% of you have had a child test already, 38% have not. All I care about is that your child's testing at the right time for them, frankly. So why do you have to have a plan? Most students are going to test 2 to 3 times. 57% of all students increase their score on a second attempt. So if I knew that I had a 57% chance of winning the lottery tonight, I don't even know if I don't play the lottery. I don't know if the lottery's drawn on Mondays. I don't think so. If I knew that, I would buy a lottery ticket. The odds would be in my favor. So it's just like anything. If you would have a majority percentage of accomplishing it. So you always need to test twice, sometimes 3 times. If your school does not automatically give the PSAT and or pre-ACT, but it is offered, then jump on that opportunity. Any practice is great practice. The data is very useful in helping you decide between PSAT and pre-ACT. Now, most testing is going to be in the junior year. Those of you I said, and we'll help you identify who you are, might test in the summer leading into your junior year. That would be the very earliest we would suggest somebody testing. Some of you also, and it'll be the minority of you, might need the SAT subject test or the optional writing portion of the ACT or SAT. Those are usually for the most highly selective schools. So as you're doing your visits, those are questions that you want to ask. SAT subject tests are best taken in May or June at the end of the junior year, and typically taken in a course where you're taking a lot of rigor. So if you've taken AP English, then you may take one of the SAT subject tests in English. If you're in AP Spanish or Spanish 4, again, taking one of the SAT subject tests in Spanish. So now, you may not, at the time that you start your testing, know if you're going to need that writing test. It would be our advice that you take it when you test on your own. So, a word to you all that are on, the majority of states of the 50 at this point are giving a state ACT or SAT. Here in Ohio, where I am, each high school gets to individually choose it's going to be ACT or SAT. These are given in the spring of the junior year, no matter what state you are listening in from, as we're on this webinar. So in Ohio, 90% are doing ACT. Here's the deal. On those state tests, you cannot take the optional writing portion. So when you test on your own, at your own expense, you need to add if you think you might be aiming for selective schools. That would play it safe, because here's what I don't want to have happen to your family. Let's say that as you're making your testing timeline, you look at the schools which you're interested in right now, and you go, oh, none of those require the writing portion of the ACT. I think we're good to go. So you go ahead and decide not to take it. Because teenagers, at least my 3 teenagers, and most of them that I work with, sometimes change their mind. Think about your child. Does your child change their mind? My children are constantly changing their minds. You do not want them coming to you in the fall of their senior year at the last second and saying, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and apply to this other school over here. And you later find out that they require the writing test and your child never took it. You would not be able to apply to that university. There is no exception. So you need to keep that in mind as you're making your plan. So we got a couple questions coming in that we're going to take a second to look at. Our daughter's taken the ACT twice. We used your prep class for the second attempt and still struggling. How many times do you take the test before you get diminishing returns? So this is interesting. ACT says 10 times. I would totally disagree with that. We have seen a trend. So I always say you plan for 2 to 3 attempts. We have seen a trend over the last 2 years where we've seen kids go ahead and increase on a 4th or 5th attempt. It's the minority of kids, but it still does happen. 5 years ago, I was seeing kids max out at an earlier number of attempts, if that makes sense, and not being able to, they were hitting their ceiling earlier. I think it's because these tests are harder. The math on the ACT is way harder than it ever was in the past. The reading is more complicated by now having like double passages that have to be compared and contrast. The level of the science skills and content knowledge has increased. So there are a great number of reasons why we think that we're seeing some kids still increase on a 4th or 5th attempt. It's certainly not the majority. I will tell everybody that ACT and SAT only go ahead and gauge the percent of students who increase on a second attempt. And the reason they don't follow it beyond that is quite frankly because it's not over 50%. Can writing scores be part of super scores? So a super score, for those of you that are on that don't know what that is, let's say you did take the ACT 3 times, but your highest English score was the first time you took it, your highest math score was the second time you took it, and your highest reading and science were the 3rd time that you took it. You would take your highest scores across all 3 attempts, you would add them up, divide by 4, that gives you a new composite score. Here's the deal with the writing. the writing is not part of your composite. So it's not part of super scoring. See, here's another question. My son took the SAT and scored an 11 on writing. Congratulations. We rarely see that. We actually do have a copy of a LEAP student who got a 12. If anybody wants to see it, you can email me for a copy of that. He may take another SAT to see if he can score better, but we may want to use his writing score from a previous test. To do so, you would actually have to send in both tests. You can't take your writing score from one test administration and move it over to another score report. You would have to send both score reports to the colleges at the time of application. Oh, Michael's telling me our daughter increased 2 points on the 4th attempt. So, and like I said, that was unheard of 5 years ago, and we're seeing that increasingly happen. So I think kids get more confident with testing. I think that students, besides the fact that they're getting more confident with their testing, they just get more rigor under their belt, and I think that's helpful to them. So moving right along. Okay, paying for college. This is the painful part of it, isn't it? This is the part that that we go, we look at, we're like, okay, well, this part's never going to be fun ever. So, quick question for you. Do you know what you can afford to spend on college and from where that money will come? So let us know what you think. I would encourage you to have a very frank talk with your financial advisor. I told you earlier that the reason I want you as a family to start really being serious about what that future college major and career is that I don't want students falling in love with a school that they can't afford. Or I'm sorry, that they can't have they don't have their college major. The next part is we don't want them falling in love with a school that they can't afford. It breaks my heart every spring when we have families. I'm going to go ahead and close this and show you guys the responses. So half of you know where the money's coming from and how much you can afford. 8% of you haven't really thought about that yet, and 38% of you are still working on it. I really don't want your kiddos falling in love with a college that you cannot afford. That is the next place of greatest conflict. So talk to your financial advisor, talk to your student. One of the things that you can do to get an idea of whether you would qualify for any need-based aid or not is complete the FAFSA forecaster to get your EFC. Your EFC is your expected family contribution. The government is telling you what they think that your family can afford. So I guarantee you, you will not agree with the number that they give you. So let's just all know that that's going to be the case. But you want to know what that number might look like. It doesn't mean because the government says you have an EFC of $20,000 and you apply to a school that costs $26,000 that they guarantee that they will cover that $6,000. It might be up to you to figure out how you're going to do that. It doesn't mean that it's up to the college to cover that. Some colleges do meet full need, not most. Private scholarships are out there. We're actually having a free in-person seminar in Cincinnati in March where we talk about private scholarships and cost and all of that. So that's something that you can also begin working on. Cost of attendance. Know what that is as you're looking at these schools and even before you decide to go visit. Cost of attendance, COA. That is tuition plus room and board plus all the hidden fees, and there are a lot of them. Do you know that you actually have to pay to go attend the mandatory orientation with your child? Yes, you do. It's not inexpensive. So you've got to start having these conversations about how you're going to pay for it. One more poll on paying, and maybe that's because I've started paying for college and I know how painful it is. Have you discussed with your child if they will have some skin in the game? So let us know. Do they know if they're going to have to pay and where that money might come from? That's a tough conversation to have, but it's only fair that you're doing this before you start looking at colleges. One thing I'll tell you, and if we're going to have our kiddos have some skin in the game, where do teenagers get money from? So besides working a job, and they're obviously limited in how much they're going to be able to make. So it looks like 40% of you have had that conversation. 31% of you, a third of you have not really started talking about it, but in another third of you, about a third of you, have started the conversation, but you haven't finished it. So I'm going to encourage those to take place. One tip, and we're going to go deeper into this stuff in March at our college costs free seminar in Cincinnati, which we will offer in the future as a webinar as well. One great source for students would be the Stafford loan. So everybody is eligible for that, no matter what, no matter how much money you make. But what if your interest is helped to be absorbed by the government or not while you're in school? It depends on how much money you make. So that is one source, and I want you to start considering that. Look up stuff on the Stafford loan or come to our free seminar to learn more about that, to see if that would be a good way for your child to have some skin in the game. So somebody's asking a question about FAFSA. We are going to get to FAFSA. It's not until the senior year though. So spring of 11th grade, if we were doing all that other stuff starting, as we're rising juniors, and we're rising juniors, and we're in the fall of our junior year, what do we do in the spring? It's a little bit of everything, because you've got a lot of stuff that you've got to accomplish now before you hit that August 1st deadline. So what we really want you to do, and we drive this home in our test planning workshop, is, at the very earliest, some of you will test in June, right after the sophomore year. At the very latest, we want everybody's testing wrapped up by September going into their senior year. Honestly, if you can have it wrapped up before school starts by August 1st, by the time applications go live, that's really best. But for some of you that are going to be later testers, you might have to still take an ACT in early September. Get that resume updated. At this point, in 10th grade, why do we do our resume? We do our resume in 10th grade because we're looking for gaps. We're looking to, do I need to volunteer more? Do I need more leadership? Because of my goals. I mean, some of you don't need to have a ton of leadership. That's okay. Do I want to get a job? Should I stick with this club for next year, or can I drop it? I was thinking about dropping it. What's the right answer for that? So as you're looking at that in 10th grade, it really becomes different in 11th grade, because whatever that resume looks like as we are hitting, that's what you'll be using to complete your applications. So you want it updated. Some college applications actually allow you to upload a resume as an attachment or a Google Doc. We recommend that you give a copy of your resume to every single person who's writing you a recommendation letter. As a former teacher of juniors and seniors, I was asked to write a lot of recommendation letters. It was my pleasure to do so. But after about the 5th letter, they all started to sound really just about the same, unless I knew something about that student outside of my classroom. Because think about it, the kids that are asking me to write them a letter of recommendation, they all were good students. They got good grades. They participated. I liked them. But if I knew something about them from outside of my classroom, it helped me to weave that into the letter and give them a better letter. So you want that resume that you started in 10th grade to be updated. Finishing up your visits, apply for your FSAID. So I still haven't said we're at that point where we're applying for financial aid. We'll get there in a few more slides. But before anybody completes the FAFSA, you must have what's called an FSAID. You can apply for it at any time. Both the parent gets one and the student gets one. If you have more than one child going, each child needs one, the parent can use the same one. So if you, go to fsaid.gov, you'll be able to apply for your FSAID that you will use to complete your FAFSA. And then you need to plan what you're going to do for your summer going into your senior year. So we had about 3/4 of the people that are on the webinar today are definitely juniors, and you're going to be applying to college, as we already said, in 6 months. 6 months from Thursday is when it goes live. The summer is when we're going to get started on that. So you plan what you're going to do this spring so you can tackle everything over the summer. So what are we doing over the summer? I actually put up just in the last week a blog post with the essay prompts, the personal statement prompts for the Common App that over 700 colleges use, that will be used for the current juniors, the class of 2019, on their applications. I don't want anybody to start writing now. I want you to write those over the summer in June or July. This is by far the hardest part of the application process, would be these essays. You, in a year, and if you're a sophomore listening in, they always give us these prompts no later than the end of March of your junior year. So there's no reason why you shouldn't write these essays in June or July. You don't have school, you've got a lot more free time. That's when you need to tackle your essays. We literally just put up today our essay workshops for this summer. Last year, we helped hundreds of students on their essays, and it'll be our pleasure to do so again. You also start your applications. So while the actual applications don't go live until August 1st, you can actually set up your account ahead of time, start your application, and go ahead and get started on things like, things that aren't going to change. Your address, where you went to high school. You're not going to be able to copy and paste your essay in yet. There are every summer changes that they make to every single application, and those won't roll into the application until August 1st. So you would have to go in and finalize your application after August 1st, but you can start ahead of time. You can go ahead, if you're done, finish testing, and you know for sure where you're heading to college, go ahead and order your test scores so you don't forget to do so later. And then get organized on your deadlines and spreadsheet. One thing that we really practice at LEAP is we do not go ahead and quote to you, other than like Ohio State University of Cincinnati and Miami University. We do not quote to you deadlines for applying to college. They change every single year, so don't rely on what was true for your older child. Don't rely on what was true for your neighbor last year. Do the research and track these yourself. We see people miss deadlines every year, and it is a heartbreaker, let me tell you. So then we go ahead and we get started in the senior year. So what does September, October look like? Hopefully, if you're well planned out, you're not doing any testing in September and October. You will request your school transcripts. New last year, there were a handful of schools that on the Common App had students self-enter their grades into their application and then still had the schools send the transcript. So Ohio State, Purdue, those were two of the schools that did that, and it required a lot more work. And it seemed like it was extra work that wasn't necessary, but they still had to do it. So we'll see if they drop that for this year. You request your letters of recommendation. Remember, you're going to give those people a copy of your resume. Why do I have additional applications? So at some schools, when you apply, you are automatically qualified. You've registered not only or applied not only to the university, you've also applied for every scholarship automatically that they have. Other schools, you apply to go to the school, but you have a separate application for the scholarships. You don't want to miss that. These are things that you have to keep track of. Sometimes when you apply, you're automatically considered for their honors program. And at other schools, you've got to do a separate application. If you are in the fine arts, you might have to audition. That would be considered yet another application. So make sure that you are checking these. Hannah's got a good question. How many letters of recommendation do you need? It's really not how many you need. It is how many you're allowed. So if you're applying to one of the 700 plus schools that use the Common App, or the schools that are using the Coalition app, they actually have in there, that you're required to have this one, you're allowed this. So it might be you're required to have your counselor and your teacher and you're allowed 2 more people. And that could be another teacher, that could be a youth group leader, that could be your employer, but they actually put parameters around that. Really large schools will oftentimes really limit you to only 1. And I know it can be disheartening if you go to a large high school and you don't really know your counselor, you're required to have that 1. Well, that's where a resume would really come in handy. So, to the FAFSA questions. Somebody asked on a previous question, when do we actually complete the FAFSA? The FAFSA, so applications go live August 1st. The FAFSA goes live October 1st. This is a big change that's only in its 2nd year. Some schools also require the CSS profile. So you have to request that FSA ID before you can complete the FAFSA, which is the FAFSA and the CSS profile will go live on October the 1st. I recommend that you don't do them the first week, because if they have any glitches in their system, you want them to work the bugs out, but that you complete them 2nd, 3rd, 4th week of October, so everything's in. Some colleges will give you your admission decision and your financial aid all at the same time, and that could be early in the fall. Other schools will admit you maybe in the fall and not give you your aid package until March. So it can look a lot of different ways depending on the school. So you're better off to just, get the financial aid applied for in October. That box is checked, it's finished. I've got, okay, here's another question on FAFSA FSA. If I know we won't qualify for aid, should we apply for the FAFSA anyway or get your FSA ID? You should. Here's why. There are some colleges that won't even consider you for merit-based aid if you have not completed the FAFSA. Doesn't seem fair, but that's the case. So if you don't complete the FAFSA, they won't even give you merit-based aid for your special talents, academic, sports, whatever that might be. So you absolutely need to keep that in mind. So I recommend, and people's circumstances change. The last 2 summers, I've had clients that we worked closely with who a parent died over the summer. And so that changed it, and then they were suddenly able to get more aid. So you really need to make sure that I think that you should go ahead and get the FAFSA completed. So you're going to see college deadlines vary greatly. I want everybody to pretend that your college deadlines are November 1st. Why? Because November 1st is, for those of you in Cincinnati, that is the Ohio State deadline. And while other schools might be December 1st, that is the deadline actually to apply and be considered for aid. So if you do not, if you don't want to be considered for free money for scholarships, then don't worry about November 1st or December 1st. But if you want to be in the front of the line for any free money they're giving out, which I always want my kids to be, then you need to hit these early action deadlines that are tied to scholarships. So if you just pretend like everything's November 1st, your family will enjoy the holidays. You won't be nagging your child to finish their applications. They'll be able to do really well in their semester exams, because some high school or some colleges are going to require that mid-year grades be sent in, which is one of the things that we have next. Is with the finish line in sight, about halfway through the senior year, you can continue to apply for private scholarships, and in schools that require mid-year grades, your school will do that for you. Remember, you might need to do a second round of visits. You're going to be evaluating your aid packages. You may appeal and ask for more money. That might be the case. That would not happen until March of your senior year. So if you get an offer that you're disappointed with in October of your senior year, you would not ask for more money until March of the senior year. So we're going to do more with that in March for you seniors, but I'll just mention that now. While there are so many different deadlines out there, the only universal deadline in all of this is May 1st. So by May 1st of your senior year, for any school that you have been admitted to, you must pay your deposit and enroll, or you have, in essence, forfeited your spot. Students get really antsy about going ahead and paying deposits, and as soon as they're admitted, so they just know when they're finished. I really recommend that you wait. Again, teenagers change their minds, and if you want to do an appeal for more aid, but you've already paid your deposit, you've lost that opportunity. So, I would go ahead and be sure that I wait till at least probably March, when I know all of my acceptances. Some acceptances come April 1st. April 1st is the very latest that any acceptances would come in. Many of the Ivies, when you do regular admission, it'll be April 1st before you know, or that week leading into April 1st. So, so that's really important to pay attention to. I think that you should go ahead and wait. So we've got a few more questions here. What are colleges in Europe like? Because I heard they're cheaper. That varies greatly too. And Canadian colleges also overall are cheaper. But you have to be careful about, are you setting on a career path where you need accreditation? And you're not going to be in an accredited program that's recognized in the United States, that could be a problem. See, can you explain what the CSS profile is? So the CSS profile is used by mainly privates, but some publics as well. And it's a different approach for evaluating your finances. It goes a little deeper. I am certainly, I'm an admissions expert, and test prep expert, but certainly the financial side is not what I am an expert at. So all I will tell you is you have to actually pay for the CSS profile. It's owned by College Board, who is the same organization that owns the SAT, where the FAFSA is free. So if you're applying to a school that requires a CSS profile, you'll complete both the FAFSA and the CSS profile. They evaluate your financial landscape a little bit differently and take more of what's called an institutional methodology and figuring out who they're giving aid to. So hopefully that would be helpful. Oh, one of our friends, Rupert, who is from Europe, says Europe needs super high AP grades, 5 mostly. So thank you for that, Rupert. I would not know that myself. I actually have more clients that are from other countries wanting to come here than vice versa. Okay, regarding merit scholarships, if you get a better offer from your second or third choice, can you negotiate with your first choice? When would be the best time to do that? Well, negotiate is a 4-letter word in the college financial aid landscape. So you never use that word. That's a dirty word. You are able to do that, but you would not want to do that until March, because here's what happens. If a school is, let's say they're lagging behind in the number of students that they normally hope to have enrolled by, March 1st or April 1st, they might be more willing then to give up some money, because it can be financially devastating to a university if that university it even misses by a few percent on the number of students that they wanted enrolled. So, I would wait, but you certainly can negotiate, but don't ever use the word negotiate. If a college says on their website that they take the SAT, but your student has only taken the ACT, is there a way to convert the score? Well, first of all, every college in the United States takes both the ACT and the SAT on equal footing. So there is, there's no college that would say that you have to have an SAT or you have to have an ACT. Some colleges, because they have maybe more students who apply with an SAT or with an ACT, they may only publish their averages on their website for that particular test, but they do accept both. And yes, there are concordance charts out there. They are not highly reliable right now because the SAT debuted a new test in 2016 and there's limited data on that. So the concordance isn't perfect yet. Gail's asking, do we recommend at LEAP taking both the ACT and the SAT? We actually do not. So because every university accepts both, we think that a student should play to their strength. And that's what we do through our test planning that we do for free for anybody, whether you're using LEAP for your test prep solution or not, which we do tons and tons of that every year, 1,300 plus students a year for the last 19 years. So we hope you'll choose us, but we will help you figure that out, whether you use us or not. So, that's why I have on this slide, as we're ending, the email address. We will give you a link to go ahead and fill out a form where Sherry, our ACT SAT director, will help you plan when you should test and what we would recommend for your prep. So one more question that I'm going to get in, and then I'll stop the recording, but I'll stay on if people have other questions, but anybody would be free to leave. If we have taken both SAT and ACT, do we have to disclose both scores? Typically, no. The exception would be the few schools that do not honor score choice. So just like when we go to the doctor, we have to give the doctor's office permission via HIPAA to communicate with our insurance, to communicate with anybody else that we will allow them to communicate with. You have to get permission for your test scores to be released. There are schools like Georgetown and Stanford who say that they do not recognize that choice and that you will have to disclose any and all testing that you've ever done. So that's on your honor, but that is expected. So you just have to be careful with that if you're applying to those highly selective schools that don't. Not all highly selective schools are like that. Most of them honor score choice, but occasionally they don't. So I just want to say thank you, everybody, for being on. We will keep this recording up and posted on our website as well. So if you have questions, you've got our email address. Please be in touch, and we'll be letting you know what other upcoming opportunities we have in the near future. Thank you so much.